Good morning, all of you. Thank you so much for joining in today. We are waiting for the nominee from the university. So once he joins, we will start with the proceedings. And until then, I would request, or rather throughout the meeting, I would request all of you to mute your microphones and not press on that present button because I have a presentation. So and any questions you can ask at the end of the session. There is a time for questions. So that time I will be answering all your questions. And thank you so much. Once again, we will wait for the nominee to join us. And then Dr. Biju will continue with the proceedings. Thank you.
Hmm. Tell me. Tell me. I switched it off.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Padmanabhan sir has just joined.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
let us, let's formally begin the defense. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. I believe I am audible to everybody. Good morning to one and all. This is a great pleasure to introduce the PhD defense of Darsana Vijayaraghavan. We have the chairman of the Board of Examiners, Dr. Anand Mahanand. He is professor in the Department of Materials Development, Testing and Evaluation at the School of English Language Education at the University at the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. And we have Dr. Padmanabhan, who is an assistant professor in the Department of English Language and Literature, Bharatiyar University. He is serving as the university's representative, university observer in this defense. First of all, let me introduce Dr. Anand Mahanand, who is an eminent academician who has produced 12 PhDs and many MPhils. And he is specializing in English language teaching and education. I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Anand Mahanand to today's defense. And I would also like to welcome Dr. Padmanabhan, who has been a source of inspiration throughout this PhD project because he was present in many DC meetings at the Bharatiyar University for Darsana Vijayaraghavan. May I welcome Dr. Padmanabhan sir to this defense. We are very much indebted to Dr. Sharavanan sir. May I welcome Dr. Sharavanan sir, former head of the Department of English, Bharatiyar University, to this defense. We have, I believe, Dr. Koshi, the other examiner of Darsana's dissertation. He also promised to be present in the defense. May I welcome Dr. Koshi to this session. And I'm very happy to welcome all other participants, including Darsana's parents and my former scholars and all those who present in this session. I believe our schedule is to be like this. I'll ask request Darsana to present her project. After that, Dr. Anand Mahanand will take over the session to lead the discussion, in which Dr. Padmanabhan also will participate in the discussions. Okay, so let's begin with Darsana Vijayaraghavan's presentation.
No, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, you asked the external examiner to take over the session, and it is he who has to request the candidate to present.
Okay, fine.
Yes, sir, please.
Dr. Anand Mahanand, the university observer, Dr. Padmanabhan, says you to take over the session to begin formally with Darsana's presentation. Dr. Anand Mahanand.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sir, yes, sir.
Yes, so welcome everyone. And I would like to request Darsana to make her presentation.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, all of you. I request all of you to mute your microphone so that you can listen to me very carefully. So, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said, I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress women have achieved. With this thought, I present to you my thesis, a Dalit feminist reading of U.R. Ananthamurthy's novels. One of the research objectives of my analysis was to study U.R. Ananthamurthy's works in a Dalit and feminist perspective. The second objective was a literary analysis of the translated novels Samskara, Bharatipura, Avaste, and Bhava. Another objective I had in mind was an intra-textual approach of the new socio-cultural theories and movements and their impact on the contemporary society. I have made an attempt to analyze U.R. Ananthamurthy as a writer preoccupied with socio-political issues of the contemporary age and how he kept himself aware of the new developments in Dalit and feminist writings by imbibing the new trends in this area and representing them in his own writings. Being one of the leading architects of the Navya movement in Kannada literature, Ananthamurthy rebelled against all kinds of conventions, both in the society and literature. And as a writer exposed to modern trends in literature, he was an admirer of Dalit literature, which was sensitive to women issues. Anandamurthy supported the Dalit writers who saw women either as oppressed or as Dalits themselves, and who made genuine attempts to bring to the forefront the experiences of discrimination, violence, and poverty of the women. And in his novels, especially in Samskara, Ananthamurthy has represented the issues of caste and gender discriminations, the issues which have more contemporary significance than they had in the 1960s. And Ananthamurthy, in fact, claimed that while writing the novel Samskara, he acted culturally and politically and from the rationalist standpoint and could not ignore the problems of Dalit people. You can see the division of chapters of my thesis right now, and I would like to take you through each and every slide of each and every chapter. So, the first chapter, which I have titled an overview of Ananthamurthy's tryst with tradition, modernity, casteism, and gender. This particular chapter questions, sorry, this particular chapter is a brief survey of the Dalit and feminist movement and the origin and development of Dalit feminist theories and movements. And this has to be studied as an offshoot of some postmodern theories, which question the grand narratives on one hand and the peripheral issues and ideas on the other hand. The new theories asserted that the liberation of women and the subaltern class is possible only through their own individual struggles and agitations and not through a total revolution of the proletariat. It was with this conviction that the Dalits and women have come forward to organize themselves for their own upliftment. And these organizations, with a strong theory behind them, became popular. A number of creative and critical writers came forward to give them the intellectual support also. And this provided a situation to create and criticize literature from a subaltern perspective. That art and literature have been controlled and dominated by Brahminic patriarchy. This actually brought to light a fact so far hidden and suppressed for some social and political reasons, and attempts are then made by a new genre of critics to reread even these literary works from a Dalit and feminist perspective. Naturally, when the old classical works are thus subjected to rereading in the light of these new theories, it became evident that many of the authors were indifferent to the concerns of the downtrodden people. But it is an undeniable fact that the writers living in a cultural environment with different issues and ideologies could not have done otherwise, because every writer, as we know, is a product of his time. And at the same time, a writer, being a sensitive social being, would have sympathized with the suffering of men and women, but their sufferings would not have found a clear and definite presence in their works. And in my thesis, reading of old works, therefore, one should look for the silence of the authors and impart them voice of the suppressed. And by doing which, these old works can be made contemporary and relevant in the present world. The Dalit feminist reading of Anantamurthy's novel, My Thesis, is prompted by this surmise. The second chapter, which I have titled as Samskara, Bharatipura, and Avaste, interrogating the conventions of caste and gender. The caste and gender issues in Anantamurthy's trilogy, Samskara, Bharatipura, and Avaste, are elucidated. And in this chapter, I have made an attempt to establish that the issues of caste and gender are interdependent and intertwined to each other. And these three novels examine the traditional and feudal India, ridden with burning issues of casteism, religious superstitions, and gender discriminations. Here, I should mention that inspired by the ideas of Dr. Lohia, Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, and other socialists, Anantamurthy attempted a metaphorical representation of secular views on segregation of caste and gender in India. Sanskara presents the conflict between two castes, namely the Brahmins and the Dalits. And this conflict develops into the basic ideological conflict of the novel. And the conventional readings of the novel Samskara focus their attention on Pranachacharya, the protagonist, who is a typical Brahmin, an epitome of both upper casteism and male chauvinism. A close reading of this novel reveals that there are a number of issues in the novel which are not projected in the earlier readings in a way it deserves. For instance, though the novel has a hero, which is Pranashacharya, a patriarchal figure who dazzles other characters, there is no heroine who can be an equal counterpart to him. Now, Bhagirathi Pranashacharya's sick and invalid wife, she can't be regarded as the heroine, as she is depicted as a weak and submissive woman, and probably created by the novelist to show off her husband's magnanimity and nobility of character. Chandri, a Dalit woman who has all the potential to be a heroine, a highly competent woman to be an irresistible counterpart to the protagonist, disappear in the middle of the novel. So neither the novelist nor the conventional critics have a justification to offer in this regard. Similarly, though the novel presents some Dalit characters, it does not delve deep into the complexities of their social or personal life. And I would say that a common reader gets the impression that the Dalits, with their different culture, form an alienated group of people who have to be isolated from the mainstream life. In Samskara, though Chandri is presented in bright colors in real life, the condition of Dalits, and especially of the women, still remain very pathetic. Dalit reading targeted not just a literary study or of the novel and the characters, but it was also intended as an analysis of the social and cultural problems in real life. And a Dalit reading in my thesis, I have considered the novel as a socio-cultural text and not as a product of an individual writer. The author's prejudices for or against these issues are analyzed from a cultural perspective and not from a personal point of view at all. Thus, Anantamurthy's attitude to Brahminism and Dalit feminism is examined in the work by me. His second novel, Bharatipura, in this novel this novel also deals with the highly sensitive topics of untouchability and casteism in India during the time. But here, the questions raised in Samskara are given a more public and political form. The novel highlights the problems of Dalit emancipation and temple entry. The caste system in India is subjected to a close scrutiny, and the novelist concludes that it is not the outcome of the notion of tolerance of Indian society, whereas it is based on the hierarchical notions of pollution and purity. Jagannatha, who is the hero, the protagonist of this novel, is portrayed as a victim of his own confused ideas of social change and socialism. And I would say that the novel holds a mirror to the changing Indian way of social and religious life. Aveste, the third novel in the trilogy, can be considered as a political novel, and this novel also pursues the social issues like caste and gender. Krishnappa, the protagonist, is a member of lower caste community, and the story of his rise and fall sums up the status of Dalits in Indian politics and their consequent struggles for survival. And as a leader, he remains incorruptible, and in his last days, he suffers a stroke and paralyzed. Even then, the political temptations continue in Krishnappa. The third chapter, which I have the third chapter, which I have titled as Representations of Women in Anantamurthy's Novels. In this chapter, I have probed into the question of how far the women characters in Anantamurthy's novels mold and guide the destiny of the male characters or of the men, and how far the feminist issues are linked to the issues of Dalits. Now, in Samskara, the novel gives an account of the condition of women in the patriarchal world of the Brahmins. And in the very first section of the novel, we get a glimpse into the economic insecurity of the everyday life in the Agrahara. And the novel also exposes the hypocrisy of the Brahmins towards women in general. Also, while women in Brahminic community have no serious role in family or social or religious matters, in the Dalit community, women we find enjoy equal status with men. Chandri, for example, takes her own wise and practical decisions, and she proves herself to be more than equal to men in her community. This can be understood from her decision to create her own husband's dead body, Naranappa's dead body, with the help of a Muslim. And the novel celebrates the triumph of Dalit eroticism over the Brahminic asceticism. Now, Bharatipura, when we come to Bharatipura, it is a patriarchal novel where the women characters are completely subordinated to men in social and in personal life. And Margaret, Jagannatha's love, I know she's only his alter ego to whom he confesses his plans, failures, and disillusionment. In Aveste, Krishna Pagauda, who is also a domineering figure, who is called as a Durvasa, is a male chauvinist. And even in his pathetic physical condition, he thinks of lifting his stick and beating his wife Sita. There's another character called Savitri Amma, the wife of Rangappa, who is Krishnappa's nephew, represents the miserable condition of women in the villages who are illiterate and poor, struggling hard to feed their children and to satisfy their husbands also. Now, Gauri Deshpande is another character with a woman of Western education and modern views. And her relationship with Krishnappa is a highly complex one. And she believed that a woman can transgress the social bonds without groaning with a sense of sin. In this chapter, I have also looked at two characters from the novel Bhava, Radha and Saroja. They're very important characters and they can be considered as a contrast to each other. And according to me, it was Radha who molded the hero Shastri into a man capable of facing any problems in life. In this chapter, it is a study of women characters in Anantamurthy's novels. It shows that they belong to two categories, namely the poor, illiterate, and orthodox, and the rich and educated and modern. Now, Bhagirathi, Chiki, and Savitri Amma, we can categorize them into we can send them to the first category, while Margaret, Gauri Deshpande, and Radha, they belong to the second category. And in contrast to the women of the upper class, Chandri, the Dalit woman in Samskara, who challenges the age-old rituals and practices of the Brahminic community, stands out as a distinct colossal figure. And though she lacks in education and sophistication, I would say Chandri represents the voice of the suppressed and downtrodden. She is definitely the most impressive among the women characters in Anantamurthy's novels, who wins the love and admiration of the readers with her intelligence and practical wisdom. Now, I would say Chandri is in every sense a modern woman. Chapter 4, which I have titled as Women and the Other Women, the Nuances of Dalit Feminism, focuses on the contrast between Brahmin and Dalit women in all the novels, and it aims at establishing a fact that there is diversity among women, and they form distinct groups in terms of caste, class, color, and so on. And in the Orthodox Brahmin community, women in general are passive. They are also submissive, and some are victims of physical and mental tortures also. But there are a few women among them, educated and modern, who are aware of their rights and privileges in the society. And they are the ones who fight against the suppression and exploitation in the patriarchal society in which their fellow women are condemned to live. Unlike these women in the upper caste society, the Dalit women like Chandri and Beli are independent. They are also bold and assertive. They interrogate the orthodoxies and take initiative to correct the age old practices and customs in the Orthodox society. And in Samskara, the Dalit characters, Chandri, there are other characters called like Padmavati, they can be contrasted with these Brahmin women like Bhagirathi. And this contrast is indeed the contrast between two cultures to which they belong. And there are lots of parallels between the Brahmin and Dalit women in their sufferings. As women in general, they are the innocent victims of male chauvinism, I would say. And Anantamurthy's Dalit women, um, I would say, belong to the Indian tradition of heroic women like Matsya Gandhi, and they are free from the shackles of conventional moralities, and they face adverse situations with sheer pragmatic wisdom. Going on to the next chapter, which I have titled as the Rethinking Woman Man Relationship, a Feminist Perspective, deals with the question of feminist influence in the novels and uh, how the women characters, both the Brahminic and the Dalit, impact the destiny and character of their male counterparts. The leading women characters like Chandri in Samskara, Radha in Bhava, Margaret in Bharatipura, and Gauri in Avaste, they all hail from different social and cultural backgrounds. And they all belong to the rich mythological tradition of bold and beautiful women who shape the life and outlook of men around them. Now, chapter 6 is a conclusion that I have dealt with, and I concluded my thesis with the contemporary relevance of the issues of the Dalit and other marginalized groups, scrutinized very clearly in the thesis the struggles and agitations of this category of people for their identity, equality, and justice in the present day political and social life are also widely reported and hotly debated in the media. Now, yes, of course, I did come across certain limitations and scope limitations in my thesis. There were mainly two stumbling blocks. One is the non-availability of the English translations of the major critical works on Anantamurthy, as well as some of his creative works also, which did not have translations from Kannada to English. The second was the absence of any comprehensive and competent work on Dalit feminist aesthetics, which is still in a state of wilderness, I would say. And with all these limitations, this dissertation I know is not final, and I know it's far from perfect. But there are still, yes, I know there are still more spaces in these novels to be filled. And I would say, like, I would quote Ramanujan, who wrote the afterword to Samskara. The novel ends but does not conclude, is what he said. However, the study based on the so far available sources in English, both of Anantamurthy and of Dalit feminist theories, convinces that as cultural texts dealing with socio-political issues of the present time, Anantamurthy's works have been much contemporary value and significance today, and that's a scope, like, because when India is facing highly serious racial and gender problems, evidently a Dalit feminist reading can decode the hidden socio-political agenda of some important authors and their creations, which transforms them into consequential texts, representing history more than literature. I would like to conclude my presentation by quoting Shiv Vishwanathan. He is a celebrated writer, journalist, academic, and activist. This quotation is from his article Memory, Myth, and Memorial, published in the Hindu on January 6th, 2018. I quote him: "The late Kannada writer U.R. Anantamurthy once told me a story. His PhD guide and he were discussing an Ingmar Bergman film. Anandamurthy said, when the West needs to access the past, it seems to enter a historical archive. And in India, we just walk across town because an Indian always lives in simultaneous time periods whereby Copernicus and Einstein share a neighborhood. One wishes URA had written a story around this idea because he seemed to suggest that India does not need science fiction given what we do to history." Thank you.
Thank you, Darsana. I went through the thesis, and you have done a marvelous work, marvelous job. I have 4 or 5 points of appreciation for your work. You have viewed these novels as cultural texts, and you have worked on a relevant subject. Anantamurthy wrote the novel, and it was a bold step. And working on his novels is also a bold step, and you have done that. Yeah, you have argued from Dalit feminist perspective, and this is something new. The thesis is comprehensive. You have analyzed all the novels in a very comprehensive manner, and you have put forward or highlighted the concerns of Dalit women in the entire thesis. The entire thesis is on concerns of the Dalit women. That is something great. And you have used good language. I didn't find any errors or typographical errors. The references are up to date, and review of literature is also up to date. So these are the points of appreciation for your work. But I have a few questions, and you have to answer them. The first question is, can you tell us how did you conceptualize this topic and decide to work on uh, it from
Yes.
a Dalit feminist perspective? Okay, and you can also tell about your location. My question is, can a non-Dalit scholar uh, present or view a text from a Dalit woman perspective?
So my though I am Malayali completely, there are certain Dalit movements that happened in Kerala also. And I lived around 13 years in Bangalore when I had come across some of the novels by Anantamurthy. And I understood that Anantamurthy's novels dealt mainly with the life and culture of the people of Karnataka. However, the caste and other issues debated in these novels are not local. They are indeed national issues affecting the people all over India. So yes, of course, as I discussed with the in my limitation was I could not read Kannada, but with the help of many Kannada friends, I could translate. I could get understand the just of the stories written by him. But thankfully, the three novels in the trilogy, Hava, so certain short stories by Anantamurthy, they were all available in translations. And I also watched Anantamurthy in his interviews where he speaks about a lot about caste and gender, and that is when and also my MPhil thesis was a study of samskara. So that this PhD thesis, why I came to that topic is because it was like a continuation study. Like I saw the scope to analyze Anantamurthy's works in a Dalit feminist perspective. And that's the reason why I have come to that conclusion of taking up this topic as my, topic of study.
Okay, good. All right. See, there are many novels by Dalit women writers. I can name 6. Okay, Santabai Kamble's, Urmila Pawar, Babitai Kamble, Kumut Parade, Bogu Shamla, Vizila, Chirapad, and all. Why you have not this? And the famous Bama.
Yes.
So why you have not included them? You should have taken their perspectives also.
Okay. Yes, sir. Wherever required, I have taken I've mainly looked at critical studies done by women. In fact, some of the famous Dalit women writers, as you mentioned, Bama, and from our own Kerala, C.S. Chandrika, there are many others, Meena Kandaswamy, Sharmila Rege's articles I have quoted in my thesis. And I have not elaborated their views on gender and caste in my thesis, mainly because the prime objective of my study was, to investigate, not to really investigate the different views of Dalit women writers. I have focused in my study comprehensive analysis of Anantamurthy's novels from a Dalit feminist perspective. And to be very honest, I didn't find any relevant articles or quotations that I could take from them. So definitely, as I said earlier, I'm still studying on this. So in future, I will definitely take up some of their, views also. So.
Thank you. Yes, when you say that, when you read the text, calling it cultural analysis, then you have to, and also you quoted Anantamurthy's interview with Shiv Vishwanathan spoken. See, when the West looks for history, they depend on archival data. For us, it is oral tradition, from oral traditions, from folklore, and from other views, from collective memories, we construct our history. So you cannot ignore the collective views of people you are discussing. So
definitely, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, I will do that.
Yes. say that Anantamurti, his shift of idea from a radical modernist to the traditional Indian culture is acceptance of caste system. Does he accept caste system? We have seen that he was consistently against caste till his death. So how do you think that there was a shift in his?
Yeah, of course, yes, you are Anantamurthy. We can consider him as a radical modernist, and I have described in my thesis in detail how his modernist views came often into conflict with the orthodox views of the Hindus. And however, I feel that there is no evidence either in his creative or critical works to show that he had even ever shifted his ideological stand from radical modernism to the tradition of Indian culture. That is what I believe. But in fact, Anantamurthy was always critical of the caste system as well as the other evil practices in Orthodox Hinduism. And so when we can never say that Anandamurti really accepted the hierarchy in the caste system in India. Instead, I feel his attempt was often to expose the inequalities and injustices embedded, to this age-old socio-religious caste system. That is what my reading is, sir.
Good. So these were three basic questions I had. Otherwise, your thesis is a good work of research, good example, and it is very relevant, and it is written in a very lucid manner, comprehensive way, and also the review of literature references are up to date. So I congratulate you on these counts, and you have done a wonderful job. Now I will request the audience to ask questions, and those questions, however, will not be taken as assessment.
Okay, sir.
Audience, please ask your questions.
Any questions?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. I am Afsal.
Yes, Afsal.
Okay, my question is, you mentioned that you are doing a cultural analysis, especially about the caste system prevailing in our society, via the fictional works of your Anandamurti, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, primarily these are works of fiction from a perspective of, as you mentioned, a radical modernist. Okay. So how they can be taken as a matter of fact, or to analyze the culture, because basically these are works of fiction, not real incidents like what we say around us. So are you taking these texts as allegories of the Indian society, particularly about the caste system?
Okay. So basically, what I have looked at, I completely agree with you that yes, these are works of fiction. But as I had mentioned earlier, what I have looked at is, I've taken these particular instances that are mentioned in these works. Like, say, for example, when Chandri, she's a Dalit woman, and again, her husband is dead, and the dead body is lying down there, and nobody is there to cremate the dead body. Now, in this context, I'm taking the quality or the attitude of a Dalit woman, how she has come forward, being very independent, and she is taking initiative. And there is some places where we find that many women characters are considered to be on par with the Brahmin men. So I have, yes, completely agree with you that they are fictional works, but I have considered them in the cultural perspective, like taking the instances, taking the what do I say for that, the incidents that have happened in the novel. I've just taken that out, and then yes, of course, I completely agree with you. They are fiction, but then I think there is a lot of relevance during the time in which I am looking at this perspective into the novel.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Ananthamurthy, being a pioneer of the Navya movement, I think everyone who has read his works and everyone who knows him knows that Ananthamurthy is constantly, there is a conflict between his personal and political, his politics and personal space, there is a conflict. And that gets reflected in most of his works, right? Or his ideological inclinings, his education, people around him. So while doing this Dalit feminist reading of Ananthamurthy's novels, what is your personal political stand or location from which you looked at these novels? Because you are not a Dalit, I don't know if you're a feminist. So, what is your locus standi when you analyzed or when you took up this topic in giving this wonderful dissertation? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, a very relevant question. Neither am I a Dalit. I don't want to call myself a feminist, but yes, I do agree with certain ideologies of feminism. But I'm here in my work. You will see that I'm kind of exposing what are the difficulties that the Dalits have gone through and still going through. And when I read the newspaper article that came, it was in 2018, and still there in Maharashtra and all you will find issues on Dalits. So anybody as a citizen of India, I feel we need to be. It's unlike the no matter where we are, I think it is important that we sympathize and support any, in case of any downtrodden people in the society. I think it's very important to support them. And that was the only view in, the reason why I wanted to understand more. And as as Dr. Anand had suggested to me, I will still be continuing my study, looking at what all other critics have got to analyze about this. So that's it. Any other questions?
Ma'am, I've
Yes.
got a question.
Yes.
Ma'am, first of all, I congratulate you for a very coherent and a very pleasant presentation. So my
Thank you.
question is this. So you were dealing with Ananthamurthy's novel, which were representing the socio-cultural malice called as casteism. And in the West, if we consider the Western culture, we have a similar malice or a social evil, which is called as racism. So, is casteism or racism, which is difficult to erase from the society? How do you comment on that?
It's actually a very difficult question. I think it is the perspective that matters here, actually. So, yes, of course, Alice Walker, writers like Alice Walker, all of them have criticized a lot on this topic. But I think my view was. What do I answer? It is my intention was Just that you are Anantamurthy as a writer, preoccupied with socio-political issues of the contemporary age. How we can read that particular novel into this? I didn't want to look at. Otherwise, I could have looked at a comparative study also with the West, but I didn't want that in my thesis. My intentions were completely different. I don't
Okay,
know if
ma'am.
I've answered your question.
Okay, ma'am. I just one more question.
Yes.
So, with respect to this Anantamurthy's novel, does he suggest any redemption for Indians from the clutches of casteism?
No, there are no mention of anything of that sort. As far as many other readings go, you will see that he is in his novel. There are critical works wherein they exemplify the character of Pranashacharya or Jagannatha and all that, who are in that high class or Brahminic community. My reading, that's what I was telling, that was one of the limitations of my study also. Like I couldn't find wherein critics were empathizing with the Dalits or the female or the women characters in his novels. Even his novels, he has a thing.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, Darshana.
Yes,
Congratulations.
sir. Thank you so much, sir.
I am Dr. Ahmed from Kerala. So you are
Yes,
a
sir.
Malayali, you are a person from Kerala. So why did you take a Kannada writer? What is the motivation behind that?
Yes, I was in Bangalore for a very long time, and in fact, I have even tried to meet Yuva Anantamurthy before he passed away. So the context in which I was in there, I have worked with a school which is, I won't say. Like, okay, I would say it's a minority group school. Okay, it is from there that I started looking at all these issues. So I found that in that particular group, in that particular school, I could find many of these issues happening. The girls were asked to wear a scarf and come to school, and then I wanted to do some work on that minority group, but then I while doing readings and all, I found this is much more complex and more relevant than their group. So that is the reason why I have taken up this particular topic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, any more questions?
I have one more
Any
question.
other question?
I have one more question, Dr. Anand, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, in the context of the recent political events in the United States that kind of globally were very very covered by the news media, which is the Black Lives Matter, right? So the Black movement, like the Dalit movement in India, is also very has been a very long movement, and there are also like the Dalit feminist point of view that you talk about in your thesis.
I'm sorry. There is some disturbance.
Yeah. So, like the black movement that is happening, like the Dalit movement, there is in the West there is this black movement writing about the
Yes.
the injustices and other things that the black people go through, and there is a section of writing that looks at black women and the the double injustices that they go through. One as women, second as black women, right? So how do
Yes.
you juxtapose or how do you do a comparison between the Dalit feminist, kind of writing or analysis of what is happening in India, Dalit feminism, if you were to say, and the black women related writings or injustices that they go through. Are there any similarities? What are the differences that you see between both of these?
Okay, there is definitely a lot of similarities, and I had not looked at this initially, and it was in one of my DC meetings when I think it was Dr. Patmanabhan himself who suggested to me to look at works by Alice Walker, and that's when I read the novel Purple, is when I understood that there is definitely a lot of comparison, but then what I thought is there is that contextual, what do I say, the location in which the Dalits are and the location in which the Americans are, that had a lot of difference. So I didn't delve into it too much because I found that our Dalit women in their societies, they were beaten up, they were, even under poverty. Now, that kind of a extreme level I didn't find in those novels. And but definitely, yes, the issues, if you take it in the what do I say for that, the top level, if you look at it, yes, the issues look similar. But when we delve too much into it, we find that I could understand the issues of the Dalit women, but not so much of the Black Americans. So that is the reason why I didn't look at it right now. In fact, in my if at all, if I do a postdoc, I would be definitely looking into the details of that. That is what I have, because I thought there is so much more that I need to look into when I have to do a comparative study, comparative or contrast, whichever the study is. So that is the reason I have not looked too much into that in my thesis. But yes, of course, I have mentioned a few comparisons in the thesis.
Great, thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, one more question from my part. This is a very basic question about the idea of representation. So, when a non-Dalit writer try to represent the lives, especially the marginal lives of the marginals, how do the Dalit critics respond to Anantamurthy's representation of the Dalit lives? So, are you mentioning it in your thesis?
Okay, I personally believe that in creative writing, even a male Savarna writer can sometimes depict the personal or social or political issues of Dalit women, and much more effectively than a Dalit writer himself. And I think that what is more important is a creative imagination than the gender and caste of the writer. And for instance, I would like to quote Shakespeare. As Shakespeare was a male writer, and he had portrayed the women characters in his plays more prominently than the women writers in later era. And the fact that a writer belongs to a particular caste or gender, I don't think that and that does not entitle him or her to claim the genuineness and the depiction of the caste or gender issues, and that's what I felt.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Thank you.
If there are no questions, we shall wind up. Can we call Darsana Vijay Raghavan now? Dr. Darsana Vijay Raghavan or Dr. Darsana Vishnu. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. The observer, Dr. Jibu will visual.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Darsana, Dr. Padmanabhan has something to say. Padmanabhan, sir. Okay, I believe let's conclude with if Darsana wants to thank the examiner.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Anand and Dr. Koshi, for examining my thesis. It was a pleasure to read the comments that you had sent, and I would definitely look at all the points. In fact, as I said earlier, I've not finished with my study on this topic. So definitely, I will look forward in my upcoming studies. I will be looking at all the points that you had mentioned. And I would like to thank Dr. C.S. Biju for 5 years. He's been helping me out with any silly doubt, any silly, even if I have submitted a not so sensible lesson chapter to him, he would very very nicely explained to me, saying that, this is not how you write it. This is how you write it. And my fellow colleague, Ms. Rosali, she's Dr. Rosali now. So all of them, they've helped me immensely. And Bharatiya University, all the people in all the employees in the Research and Development Center, the controller of examinations office, everyone has helped me all through the journey of this thesis. And I would like to thank all of you for at one message or at a call, all of you participated in my thesis. So I would like to thank you and also conclude this by just quoting you are Anantamurthy, because I think some of your questions would be answered by this quote. It is said that Somerset Maugham traveled the world with a notebook to learn the essence of life, and Kafka sat in a room for the same objective. Yet, Kafka came out with a better worldview. I think I hope to be the Kafka. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Shall we end the call, sir?
Sure.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Ended. You can leave the call, Kannada, so that everybody can go.
It will stop.
Then no need, let everybody go.
Everybody saying congratulations. So thank you in the chat.
Free. അല്ല കുഴപ്പമില്ല പറഞ്ഞോളൂ.
I didn't know the answers. You told you nicely. Why you asked?
That QuickTime thing has not recorded, Kanna.
Pardon?
That QuickTime thing has not recorded.
Why you
I
didn't
don't
press
know.
this?
I pressed it.
Then it will come.
It is not.
Go here. Quit. No, then only it will stop.